Okay, Phil, so I haven't seen Friday Night Lights since the one, I think the one and only time I watched. I think I might have rewatched season one or maybe season one and two, but Jackie and I watched it around the time that it was on, and I think it started in 2006. The TV series lasted what,
seven. I'm thinking 7 to 11.
2007. Okay. So although I've watched the show, it has been a number of years. So you definitely have to refresh my memory. I mean, I've read up a little bit on it. The song you chose is, and I hope I pronounced the name, I think it's Devendra Banhart.
Is it Barnhart or Banhart?
Or Banhart. Is it Banhart? So you're right. Banhart. And the song's called Now That I Know.
Yeah.
And I've listened to the song, a couple times since you've put it in the book, and I sort of remember the scene a little bit. But where do you want to start? I mean, I know the show. Well, you've ended up just watching it a second time, the whole thing.
Yeah, I just come out of a rewatch. Again, credit to you. I don't even think I'd heard of not only the TV series or the movie, the book. I think it was completely new to me when you recommended that I watch it. And I had probably just finished Mad Men. Going by the blog, I think it was one of the first things I posted after we finished with Mad Men. And I told you at the time, well, I don't know if this is going to be for me, the first few episodes. And the news coming out of the rewatch, I can say without hesitation, Scott, it's one of my 5 favorite shows ever. I just loved it this time, first season included. The thing that surprised me, and it turns out not to be unique among people that watch Friday Night Lights. I don't know if this will be your recollection, but I don't usually talk about stuff like this. I teared up probably 10 times over the course of the 5 seasons. Stuff really got to me. A lot of it had to do with me as a teacher. Certainly there were 3 people who got accepted into universities, and every time it really emotionally got to me. Smash, Riggins, even though it turned out to be, completely wasted on him.
Right.
And especially Tyra, when she got accepted. So I just loved it this time. And I was thinking how it stands so much in opposition to all the other shows I love, which are always centered around either one character, or in the case of the Americans, 2 characters who are, sometimes they're just flat out not good people. Sometimes they're good people who are just extremely flawed.
Yeah.
I don't think Don Draper's I don't think he's an awful person. But, he does some awful things. Tony Soprano is basically an awful person who you end up kind of grudging.
But likable in a...
Walter White.
His personality is likable.
Yeah, he's got an engaging personality. And he does some things that are moral and caring. Walter White is real... By the time you finish Breaking Bad, he's a real piece of slime. Friday Night Lights is centered around 2 people, the coach and his wife, they're just great people.
Yeah.
They have, do you remember they have the run-in the last season, and it's handled so well, where she says, look, it's now my turn. She's been offered this job. Do you remember that at the college, the small college? And meanwhile, they decide to, they're only going to keep the 1 football team. They're getting rid of East Dillon. But the Panthers, his old team, they're ready to offer him 5 years, which makes that decision count. Mm-hmm. If they had just blown it all up and he didn't have a decision to make and said, there's nothing here for me, let's go, it wouldn't have meant anything. Yeah. But they have a real run-in over that. And he, for the first time, I think, in 5 seasons, comes across, you kind of really dislike him for 1 episode at least, 1 or 2 episodes. And she has this great moment where she says, when they offer him the contract, she says, well, I'm going to have the good grace to say what you did. Congratulations, Eric. And she kind of walks away. Other than that skirmish in the last season, they're just great people. You want to be the coach. Everybody, and all this stuff, everybody's joking, that we all want to be Coach Taylor. And,
like you want them to be your parents kind of thing.
You want them to be your parents. He's the teacher I wanted to be. He's bringing, he's saving the life of one kid after another. He's and he never, and the way they do it, the way he talks to them though, he's got this, he puts up the gruff exterior. Somebody comes for help and okay, and he gives them a little bit of help, wise counsel. He says, okay, what else? Get the hell out of my office.
Yeah.
I guess I should go to that scene. I will say
Yeah, talk about the song.
music is more important. And I even, I might have to go off screen. I guess you'll see me, Scott, but I did some homework here. I went to TuneFind. I noticed by the 5th season, music had become important. And yet the interesting thing is it was a lot of music I didn't know. Almost always they had a song end each episode. It would be a really atmospheric, I guess alt country, often an alt country kind of thing.
Right.
And I went and looked up some of the, unfortunately, TuneFind would never say this was in the end credits. So I was sort of guessing, but I play the song and I go, yeah, that's representative of what I'm talking about. Just let me go to my list here for a second. So here's some song. Now, Iron and Wine, I've heard of them, but Belated Promise Ring was in one episode. And I said, yeah, that typifies what I'm talking about. Band of Horses, Infinite Arms, never heard of them. The National, I had heard of them. Start a War, which I did like so much that I ended up putting that on my hard drive when I watched it the first time. Christer Exel, Something Beautiful.
Wow.
Delta Spirit, Devil Knows You're Dead. Now, this song you probably remember because it's used 3 times. Tony Luca, Devil Town. Do you remember the song Devil Town?
Maybe if I listen to it.
If you listen to it, you'd recognize it immediately.
Bell.
It's used in 3 different episodes. Anyway, I don't know if they were trying to break bands or what was going on, but I really enjoyed the music those last 2 seasons without knowing what any of it was. They just seemed to choose it really well.
Interesting, and it's all contemporary, like fairly contemporary stuff.
Yeah,
anyway, so.
And when I was going through the TuneFind credits, when they used hip hop, they tended to use artists that were known. Right. You know, I noticed Ludacris and T-Pain and 50 Cent. Now, hip hop often would end up getting relegated in the background at a party or something.
Yeah.
But they didn't seem too adventurous in terms of that, and a lot of it was very good. But I don't know what was up with the music they were choosing. What was behind it? I think they were actually probably trying to, break acts.
It's interesting because one of the notes I wrote on was, and the Devendra Banhart definitely sort of spurred this thought on. But I do think of that kind of sound as a bit of a subgenre for movie music, maybe around that time. Like the movie that I always go back to, and I think a lot of people commented on this at the time. It's not an original thought to me, but do you remember the movie? I think it came out a couple of years before, Garden State.
Oh yeah, I mentioned Garden State a couple times in the book. That's another,
okay. That probably was what I was thinking.
That's another film that unfortunately I think has become caricatured a bit.
It is. I think it was mocked a little bit, right? For that.
What you're talking about, and I've seen it 2 or 3 times. I kind of like it.
No, I liked it when I saw it. I think we saw it twice, and I remember it was a little bit like of that like a little precious indie in some ways.
Oh, there is.
But they had a lot of that music, and I think the TV show, this might have actually preceded Garden State. I can't remember, but we used to watch the OC. There's one musical moment in the OC I really liked, which is actually of a little different flavor. But the OC was always having songs like that, like this sort of, dare I say, the twee sort of indie.
Yeah.
Male indie sort of singer-songwriter kind of thing. And a lot of it sounded quite good, but it just wasn't stuff I was very familiar with. So maybe it sort of like plays in, I think it might be a little bit of a genre thing maybe too. Like maybe could be a little bit playing to, their perceived audience a little bit. I don't mean that in a cynical way.
No, I think Friday Night Lights is related to that. It does have a more of probably a Texas feel. But Garden State, you mentioned the word twee. That's why that film, so many people ridicule it now. It is basically the twee film. Yeah. There's a scene in Perks. It is. I mean, I think they used the Shins in that film.
That's right.
Bell and Sebastian and all those bands who had music I really like a lot, even though I didn't come to it until years later. There's a scene in Perks of the Being a Wallflower that I think explicitly is an homage to Garden State, where he gets high at a party, and just the camera work is almost, to my mind, it's identical to the way the Garden State scene is shot.
I should look up when the OC aired as well, because I think that's very much in that
I should watch that
genre as well.
So the Devendra Banhart scene is great. I believe it's season 2, maybe halfway or towards the end. It's one of those scenes, and I talk about, I even think I have an entry that probably makes a list where you get, the type of scene where you check in on 4 or 5 characters. It's the wise up scene from from Magnolia that we've
Right.
talked about. And they use a song and it links and the song's playing and you're just catching up what's happening with these 5 characters. And I tracked a whole bunch of films going back to the 60s that have used that device. So it's one of those scenes, and there's 3 main things happening. There is, remember, that's another thing I have to correct. And there's almost a racial overtone. I made a stupid mistake. I called Santiago Diego in the book. Do you remember
It's
the
funny
character Santiago?
I looked up Diego reading your review just tonight because I was like, I had to actually familiarize myself. And no one came up. Coach Taylor came up. And
yeah, it was stupid. And I wrote that on the blog, and I had just watched it. I don't know why. Santiago sounds like Diego. Laziness and stupidity. Anyway, Santiago, do you remember the character? He's the guy who they basically becomes one of Tammy's projects. Or no, I think it's just Buddy Garrity or Coach Taylor. Anyway, he's just out of prison. And
oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Who is it that picks him up hitchhiking on the way? Oh, you know whose project he is? It's Lila Garrity. She picks him up.
Okay.
She was visiting prisons. She's become very religious at that point.
Yeah.
And she gets him involved with football. And he resists at first, but he ends up moving in with Buddy Garrity. And, his past haunts him. His friend keeps coming back, trying to get him back into crime. And Buddy hosts a party for all his friends. And for one friend steals one of Buddy's valuable watches. Okay. And Santiago has to go back and retrieve it because he doesn't want anything to do with this guy. So that's one thing that's going on. He goes back, gets the watch, gets beaten up by his friend, and brings it back to Buddy. Second thing, Smash takes his sister to the movies, and there's that big. Remember, they go out of Dillon, maybe to Austin, or no, Austin's pretty left wing. They probably go to some right wing, I don't know, San Antonio or something, and they get, there's these real redneck teenagers in there that get into some racial stuff. They start being really crude with Smash's younger sister, and he ends up pummeling the guy, and that's what cost him his scholarship to Texas A&M or UTM, where he was supposed to go. That's the second thing that's happening. And then the main focus is, remember Lila ends up doing a radio show at a Christian radio show.
Yeah, I had to look that up because I remembered the show, but I couldn't remember the character. And honestly, when I even saw his picture through Google, I could barely remember that. His name is Chris, I think you said, right?
The guy she gets involved
with. I don't
with.
remember him on the show.
He was only there for 2 or 3 episodes.
Okay, well, that would be why then.
Yeah. She ends up doing the show with him, and they get involved. Meanwhile, Riggins, and I can't give you the exact timing. He goes back and forth. From the first season, he's with Tyra, and then he gets involved. He cheats or. He sleeps with his best friend's girl, his crippled, as they say many times, his crippled best friend's girlfriend. They're still saying that in the 5th season, I think. And he seems to bounce back and forth. I like Riggins the best season 2, where he's just unapologetic. He's not with either of them. He's baiting them, saying, "Yeah, I just slept with the whatever twins last night." And he's just really funny in that. I don't like him in the 5th season. He's a different guy when he gets out of jail, but he's funny in the 2nd season. Anyway, he decides now he's in love with Lila, then he's going to pursue her. And he's driving along and he's listening to her show, and she's giving advice to a caller that calls in and says, "People make fun of me at school for being so openly religious." And she says, "You got to follow your heart. Whatever your heart tells you, you got to do it." And Riggins does the great Friday Night Lights thing. He says, "All right." I was so every time someone said "all right," this time I would just laugh out loud. And the song starts to play. So he visits the radio station, he gets some flowers, visits the radio station. And of course, it's just completely ridiculous. He sees them kiss for the first time. And then you cut to Buddy, and Santiago comes back and he's beat up and bloodied. And then you cut to Smash and his sister at the breakfast table the next morning. The mom's saying, "How was your night?" And they want to keep it secret. They don't want to let her know. And they're sort of exchanging glances. And then it ends perfectly. Coach and the wife have been having all this anxiety about handing over Gracie Bell. Remember, most bizarre looking baby in history, Gracie Bell, handing her do you remember how weird she looks right through from the time she's born? She just looks weird. Everybody comments on it. They don't want to hand her over to daycare. And finally, you know, she 2 or 3 times Tammy takes her to daycare and turns back. They just can't do it. And it ends with them finally handing Gracie Bell over. And it's funny, you know, at the door to the daycare center, it's really funny how it happens. And that song plays all through this. It probably ends just before the daycare dialogue starts. And it's such a moody, evocative song. You know, I never really investigated any more music by him, like I said I was going to when I wrote that entry. My guess is it's probably the best song he ever did. If he's done other songs that good, then I ought to be listening to a lot of his music.
Now that I know the way it goes, you gotta pay back every penny that you owe. 12 years old, in your mama's clothes, shut the blinds and lock up every door. And if you hear someone's coming near, just close your eyes and make them disappear now.
And I do sort of, I mean, you set the scene up nicely, and I do remember it, you know, somewhat. The other, I mean, the song that came to mind for me most, I think
I know
Friday Night Lights. Yeah, you don't know, obviously. I think we even talked about it when you first saw it, was the T-Rex
That was
Bang
great.
and Gone, which opens season 2, I believe,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
Open
the very
season 2.
It's
And
a
just changed
swimming pool scene or something.
Swimming pool, because they won state, right, the season before.
Right.
So it's sort of that summer. And it changed the whole tone of the show, because even though I like season 1 a lot better this time, it still is very, I won't say grim. I said it was overly grim. It's not. It's just serious. It's not a lot of jokes in the first season, not a lot of humor. And it just opened season 2 on a completely different note. And yeah, that's where everybody's partying, and the song's playing, and it plays loudly, and it plays for a good minute at least. And yeah, it's possibly my other favorite moment, although there were other moments.
It's funny. I think I liked season 1 because it was kind of, as you say, grim or something. But I think it's because, you know, it might have something to do with expectations. I was just thinking, well, a drama about high school football, you know, is it just going to be a kind of run of the mill? And there was something a little, I don't know, I like the undertow of seriousness about it. But I do know what you're saying, and I think it got a more even tone as it went on or something, I guess. And
yeah, I think it probably, I mean, certainly season 3 was really good. And then it was just a great idea to completely switch to the next 2 seasons. That was just one of the best reconceptualizations of a show. I don't know if there's ever been a show that had such a drastic change as that did from season 3 to 4. Even though, you know, a couple of the characters do remain. I think even Jason. I think everybody that's in the first 3 seasons makes at least a token appearance in the last 2 seasons.
Right.
Anybody important. But that was great. Just a fantastic series. I will watch it at some point in my life. I'll watch it just for sheer pleasure. I'll watch it a 3rd time.
Yeah, that's one I would definitely try and watch again. I just have to mention an anecdote. You know, Jackie and I.
Could you talk? Sorry, Scott. Maybe this is what you're going to talk about. I was hoping you'd talk at least briefly about the visit that you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Texas. Actually, yeah.
I meant to bring that up.
No, that's okay. Well, we're such big fans of the show, and we were looking to do something anyway, and it was before Ava was born, so we didn't have any kids. And Jackie, I think, had always kind of wanted to go to Texas. I hadn't really given it much thought, but we were so into the show that we actually we flew to Texas, and we actually went to see a football game with the Permian Panthers, which is who I think that's the real life name of them, the Permian Panthers, and that's who the team was actually, the story of Friday Night Lights was actually based on. Wow. And partly what I wanted to, I mean, part of my interest, just from the idea of going to Texas. And it was a fantastic trip, actually, for many reasons. But the thing that I found so fascinating about the show is I just couldn't, it just seemed phenomenal to me, like just how big the high school football culture was. Like obviously football is huge in the US, but it really gives you a sense of, wow, and this is like high school. Like it almost seemed like high school football there means more than CFL football means almost anywhere in Canada. Although maybe not on places like at West Coast and stuff, where it actually is, like places like Calgary, CFL football is actually a much bigger deal than it is in Canada, for obvious reasons. But it just seemed, so I wanted to see if it had that sort of sense or that size and scope. It didn't feel quite like that, but I mean, you're not living there, so you're not like following, the daily events. But the game was really big. I mean, it was in a pretty big stadium. There's probably like at least as many people as you'd get at a Toronto Argonauts game now. Like for a high school football game, it was pretty remarkable. Like it was an event. I mean, I've been to college football games in the US, and I've been to a couple NFL games, and it's obviously downscaled from those, but it's still pretty huge. Like you feel this sense that the whole town is driving to the game and stuff. And we totally wanted to, it's almost a cliche, we really wanted to live that experience, having been a fan of the show, and we did kind of get it, right? It was kind of neat. I mean, and the last thing I do have to mention is on the way home, and this is actually remarkable, although how the story ends is just so stupid. We're waiting, I think the flight was delayed, excuse me, I think it was out of Boston. And so the line, but it was actually in the queue, like the delay happened while the queue for the airplane was already sort of in effect. So we weren't waiting in seats and stuff. We were actually in line to get on the plane, or maybe it's to go through the turnstile. I can't remember. But the character who plays Matt Saracen was in line. He was going on the same plane as us. He was like literally about 10 feet from us. And we hemmed and hawed and said, should we go say hi to him and say we're big fans of the show? And we didn't. I don't know why we didn't. Like, and the other thing is the show wasn't a huge show at the time. So he probably would have actually in some ways appreciated, and he just looked so ordinary. He had like a hoodie on. Yeah, I think he was by himself.
What year was this? What year did you go?
I think it would have been after first season. Like it would have been around the time of first or second season. I don't even think it was the second season had happened yet. And I think he wasn't a big star. He still isn't, really. But so he was just there on this plane. And I'm kicking myself that we just didn't, an autograph would have been one thing, but it's not even the autograph. It would have just been neat to say, hey, we're really big fans of the show. We're from Canada. Because it might have been interesting to him. Oh, really? Like, you're watching it up in Canada? Like, why didn't we go say hi to the guy? I don't get it. Like,
I think it would have been really interesting to him if you had told him you were down there specifically to try. I know.
It's like we make a trip for that reason. It's like put on a platter for you. I think we both realized after, like, yeah, that was just ridiculous that we didn't. But I think we were thinking, yeah, I don't want to bug the guy though. Like, just this is personal space. But
you and Jackie,
if he was a big star, it would be a little different because people like that are always getting bugged. But he looked like he stepped right off the set of Friday Night Lights, literally. Like, there was nothing remotely ostentatious about it.
You and Jackie should have surrounded him and started chanting "State, state."
Yeah.
He would bug me at times because he had this array of tics and mannerisms. He'd always kind of be slow and drawling. He's like a Jimmy Stewart character, and at a certain point, it became repetitive.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
That's great. Of all those young actors, and I think some of them weren't nearly as young as like the actress that played, I've mentioned this before, the actress that played Lila Garrity was like 27 or 28 or 29.
Oh, really?
She looked so youthful.
Wow.
The one that went on to, I think, has gone on to have a real career is Jesse Plemons.
Oh, he has,
at least on TV, he starred. He was one of the 3 leads in that great season of Fargo, married to Kirsten Dunst, and he had a very prominent role in Breaking Bad towards the end, the last season or two, and I think that spilled over onto Better Call Saul. And I've seen him in at least one film where he had a big role. He's
great.
He was great as Landry. Yeah, he was so funny.
Oh, I know.
I mean, one of the jokes of the show is that think of the women that he was involved with: Tyra, The one that was in love with him, the kind of comic book spiky haired girl, and then the Devin, who was beautiful, who was gay. Her character was gay, and there may have been somebody else. It was just like one high school girl after another was throwing herself at
But
him.
there was always like a person like that in high school. I found like there was always
Yeah.
someone who like wasn't quite like they weren't the great athlete or anything, but their intelligence like
Well, he was
definitely
able to
made them
tutor
really
people.
attractive to people or something. So
Yeah,
they kind
he was
of
a tutor for Tyra. Tyra would
Yeah.
basically use him have a tutor. Anyway, that was funny. I think that's all I want to say. It is really, really, really good. Great
So
show.
last thing, Phil. So
Yeah.
put your head down.
Yeah,
Clear
what
eyes,
prop do you have?
full hearts, can't lose.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Had to get that in there.
That's the best joke in the last episode. Remember?
Oh, really? I don't remember. I don't remember
Oh,
that.
it's the last scene where they moved to Philadelphia. I had to look up. I didn't know. I was pretty sure they won that last game. But if you remember, the pass is thrown, but then it's by the time the pass lands, they've moved on to Philadelphia. So they don't say that they won, but there are hints that they won. Anyway, he's talking to his new team. And after he's changed. Obviously, East Dillon changed him, and he's got them all take a knee. And he goes, okay. And the last thing he says to them is, what is it? It's got
clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Okay, he says, clear eyes, full hearts, and then he waits for them to say can't lose, but they're all just looking at him. He goes, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that was so funny.